I would want to be a construction worker, like Bob the Builder. Again, talking about like working with your hands all day. I felt like I was too undecided when I was, as an undergraduate, about to graduate. If I would have just been a little bit more decisive, career might have looked a little bit different.
That's true for a lot of us, During that period, you're still figuring out what to do, what not to do. So
Yeah.
I think that's a story for all of us. What do you think about MBA after engineering?
I definitely think that the MBA has benefited me in the career. I think an MBA program, it doesn't prepare you to be a manager, it prepares you to be an executive.
How do you see this industry changing?
Oil and gas as an industry used to be one of the most attractive industries for students to go into. We need to be more relevant to the younger generation because no longer is that the case where it's people's dreams to go work in oil and gas.
This is the Oil and Gas Breaking Bias show, where we are going to invite industry leaders to talk about their journeys and also technologies of tomorrow, in an effort to break some of the biases that might have formed around this energy industry. Hello everyone, I hope you're happy and healthy. I'm Ananja and you are listening to the Oil and Gas Breaking Bias show. And today I'm excited because I will be joined by Adam Forness, who is a mechanical engineer and currently works as product line manager wellhead at Innovex. He has a long history serving this industry, and previously he worked with the FMC Technologies and Technip FMC. He is also a dedicated father and husband and serves this community on day-to-day basis. So with that, welcome Adam. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me today, Anand.
It's great how we connected, but we briefly talked about your experience, and I think we have a good story to tell here. So without any further delay, Adam, can you talk about your personal and professional journey and some of the biases that you might have came across?
Sure. Well, I guess I'll walk you through kind of, where I went to school and then my career. So I went to school at Texas A&M, got my degree in mechanical engineering. I graduated in 2012 and started working for, at the time it was FMC Technologies. I actually started working for them when I was a student for 2 years as well. And so that kind of gave me a rapid start in the industry through that program that FMC had. And then I went through a rotational engineering program that allowed new hires to circulate throughout the different groups that they had at FMC, and then found my place in the subsea wellheads group, and then spent the next 7 years in that group specifically. And then in 2019, I decided to take a new role at a different company, being Drillquip, which is now called Innovex, and that's where I am today. So I started out at Drillquip as a design engineer in the subsea wellheads department as well, but then got to do a 3-year stint as the product line manager for the energy transition group. So that was definitely a big change. And around that similar timeline to whenever I switched from FMC to Drillquip, I was also enrolled in an MBA program. And so that was sparked by a number of reasons, but that kind of put me in a position where as soon as I graduated, I was like, I want to do something with my degree. I just spent all this time and effort and work there.
We'll talk about that one.
I hours.
I also went through the same path.
Okay.
So we'll talk more about it, what do you think about MBA after engineering?
Yeah, for sure. And so I wanted to be able to show my wife really hey, I'm doing something different. I didn't just put us through all this pain of me working late hours and stuff.
I know.
Just to stay an engineer forever. So
it's a big commitment.
So the energy transition gig is what I'll call it. That was kind of like my springboard into doing something outside of engineering, but still being able to use the same skills. I mean, that's where I'm at today is as another product line manager specifically for subsea wellheads. Innovex now. Drillquip and Innovex just went through a merger towards the end of 2024. So it's still brand new for me to call this company Innovex now. So that's
You're still getting used to.
Wait, yeah, it's taking some getting used to. That's a quick overview of kind of what my journey's been today.
And how was the transition? So let's go back, how you came into engineering field first. How did you decide to pursue engineering?
So my dad worked in oil and gas, never as an engineer though. He worked for Amoco and then BP for basically his entire career. I was math-minded, and usually that's kind of okay, if you're a STEM-minded kid, you're good at math and science, you should be an engineer or a doctor or something. I started out as a biomedical engineering major, and that was because I wanted to be a doctor. But if you wanted to be a medical doctor, there's no like thing that you major in really. And all the folks that I talked to are like, oh, go major in something else besides like biology or something
Yeah, you're right.
that you could use as your initial career in case you don't go all the way through. So I started out in biomedical engineering, and I was in the seminar class that they had for the freshmen, and every person, you had people from the industry and biomedical engineering that would talk about what they do. They were all mechanical engineering majors.
Okay.
And so here I am sitting as a biomedical engineer, and they're all mechanical engineering majors. Then I go to the career fair, and out
Okay.
of like the 150 companies there, only two were hiring biomedical engineers. And but the one major that everybody was hiring was mechanical engineers. So I switched to mechanical after that, and then
Interesting.
I ended up loving it. And so that's where I ended up.
And also I saw you also worked as an undergraduate researcher. How was that? Like, and how it helped you in career?
So my sophomore year, I was just trying to look for if I wanted to go get a master's or something. Okay, what's that going to be like? And they're like, well, you'll probably end up doing research and work for a professor. So I reached out to one of the professors that happened to be looking to hire undergraduate students. And then I ended up applying for and winning a grant that basically worked the same way as an internship, but you got to work as an undergraduate researcher that summer. And I did that. And that was me just kind of toeing the line with, trying to figure out what I wanted to do for the next steps after graduation. Did I want to go get a master's or not? And so that kind of allowed me to get kind of an early start in figuring that out.
So one thing, like when you moved from your engineering degree into the work, like the real work when you picked by Technip FMC, that's what we call these days. How was that transition? Like, how was your experience during that transition?
Yeah, there's maybe a few ways I can answer that question. At the time of, like I said, I got to work as well while I was a student for FMC, and I did that simultaneously as working as an undergraduate researcher. So I had two jobs. I was getting paid by FMC, and I was getting paid by the school.
It's cool.
And I got paid more. I got $15 an hour working as a researcher for the school, funny enough. But I enjoyed the practical things that I was getting to do working for FMC, and I was learning lots there. And then time came where I was like, okay, I'm about to graduate, and I kind of had this choice, right? Do I go ahead and just start making money, or do I spend more years in education and go get my degree? And I was very wishy-washy. I think I'm going to jump ahead to maybe one of the things that you said you might ask me of what are my biggest regrets. And my biggest regret, I think, is I was so wishy-washy at that time period.
That's true for a lot of us, During that period, you're still figuring out what to do, what not to do. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's a story for all of us.
for sure. So I did choose to, stay working with FMC, and that was a pretty easy transition because in terms of like interviews, right? Like
Yes,
I'd
right.
already done my interview as an undergraduate student through a career fair, and I had been working for 2 years. So it wasn't a huge transition of me needing to start with a new company. I was familiar with the company, but like my last semester, I proposed to my now wife, and so kicked off another journey of kind of juggling the difference between starting as a new professional, a young professional, and then also getting married, which is probably not common these days for our generation of right out of college or getting married. A lot of people tend to get married a little bit later in life.
Definitely. It's interesting. I'm going back to that discussion we just started about doing MBA after engineering. I have done myself, and I get this question almost every few months. What do you think about should I pursue MBA or not? Like people reach out to me and to get my feedback. I can share my feedback on this one, but I want to hear yours.
I definitely think that the MBA has benefited me in the career. Now, can I say that like what a lot of people will ask, well, what actually benefited you? Was
Oh,
it the
yeah,
network?
return on investment.
Yeah, was it the network? Was it the certificate, the degree that you get at the end, or
And
was
how
it
much
actually
money
what you
and how
learned?
much money you were able to make out of this,
Yeah, for sure, for
Yes.
sure. And yeah, it was definitely expensive. There's cheaper ones out there, but with Rice University, so it
It's
was
one of the expensive one, yeah.
one of the more expensive ones, a private school, that sort of thing. But no, I regrets getting the MBA. I mean, I think that was kind of the way the timing worked out in my career, it was nice to finish that up and be able to do something with it without necessarily going and getting a new job. And honestly, I love engineering, right? But I definitely felt like I needed something to get out from under just being treated as an engineering resource and just another number, another employee in the
Or just as
company.
one individual, like in big organization.
For sure, for sure. So it gave me a leg up to be able to think differently, speak in terms that managers or executives, I would say. I think an MBA program, it doesn't prepare you to be a manager, it prepares you to be an executive.
And also like as a leader, like you see yourself as a leader.
For sure.
And I could easily relate. So when I was doing MBA, so I did my MBA with the University of Alberta in Canada. And when I was doing, the people were asking me, like, what's your return on investment? Are you going to get bigger job because you are doing this MBA? I said, I don't know. Like, nobody can say, okay, you have done MBA, now you will become this. It's very hard to quantify. But when I look back, MBA gives you different perspective. It gives you confidence. You belong to different league. And if those things comes with it. So it's very hard to quantify return on investment on the money that you're spending. But at the same time, it gives you the confidence that goes forever. That's how I can summarize. So it's good to hear you had a similar experience. Because one of my friend is doing right now MBA with the Rice, and before he kept asking me, "What do you think? What do you think?" I was like, "Go ahead. If you think it's going to change something, then you go ahead with it."
Yeah. I think if I were giving anybody advice, it's just kind of try to pick out something that you want to shoot for afterwards, right? It should
Definitely.
be a means to the end.
Makes sense.
And what is your goal to do it? Don't kind of do it just blindly. But I also would say, especially being an engineer, a lot of folks are like, well, should I go get a master's in engineering or a master's? I would say, unless you're doing it right out of school, just to go ahead and get it done. Like the benefits of going back to school after you've been working for a while just to get a master's in engineering probably doesn't pan out. Like
Mm-hmm.
there might be certain jobs or positions that you need a master's to go for. I always hear some examples like SpaceX. They
Yeah.
would always favor a master's in
Yes.
engineering over a bachelor's or something like that. That might be one case
In general, engineer is engineer. Like that's how they see.
for sure.
A very interesting journey. So now also you have more than a decade serving this energy industry, like working with the Technip FMC and now with the Innovex. How do you see this industry changing, and what are the challenges that we can come over with whatever resources available to us?
I think in two regards. Number one, I think the oil and gas industry at large has changed because of the energy transition and the emphasis on looking for alternative energies. That's played a much bigger role in maybe our culture or our beliefs. And I definitely saw that working as in the energy transition space for the past few years. So that changes things. At the same time, I think oil and gas as an industry used to be one of the most attractive industries for students to go into.
Yes.
Definitely whenever I was in school. And I've had mentors in the past talk about what do we need to change as an industry. And one thing is we need to be more relevant to the younger generation because no longer is that the case where it's people's dreams to go work in oil and gas. And so that's definitely a huge change I've seen since me first going through school.
I fully agree, and I think that responsibility also goes back to oil and gas industry in general. Like it's not motivating new generation to come and join. And there is another narrative we talked about. This industry is going down in 5 years. This industry is going down in 10 years. And at the point we are making here, industry is not going anywhere. It's just transitioning itself into something new. So lots of technology we talked about, they will be used to do something better. People are talking about electrification, carbon reduction. So those technologies are available. And so this industry is not going anywhere. It will transform itself. But when you talk about Innovex or your past experience, do you see any changes on that side, like the work you did do on day-to-day basis as a product line manager? Can you talk a little bit more about it?
On a day-to-day basis, what's changed? Maybe not so much, right? I mean, we're still, I think these two companies, specifically Drillquip and Innovex, have historically been kind of, you know, oil and gas pure play companies. And there's definitely always a demand for the products and services that we offer. And energy, like we just said, isn't going away. And, what we depend on to make the lights come on and stuff, that might change slightly, but it takes so much time because there's so much inertia in the foundation of our energy infrastructure that it can't happen overnight what those changes are. So therefore, what we do day to day doesn't really change, is what has been my experience.
And also you mentioned about you are part of energy transition group, how that is transitioning after this, all the administration change and all those things, how you see the progress on that side.
So, I mean, I think being in the energy transition space, number one, that's a pretty that was a pretty big challenge. The challenge I was given was, we're seeing a rise in interest even from our customers in the energy transition space. What can we do as a company with our current existing products and services today? What can we do to participate in this new industry that's developing? Definitely what I found was there's not much that changes with our equipment, but there's definitely things that change in other equipment. There's definitely bigger challenges out there than me being
Yeah,
in the
you're right.
subsea wellhead space. What
Yes.
changes? There's the capture technologies. I should say, we focus a lot on CCUS, mainly because some people say it's kind of like oil and gas in reverse. But CCUS would use the same equipment as what we supply today. And so then we looked at, well, what changes? And the answer is really not too much needs to change between our equipment that we have today and
You
what would
just
be
use for
needed for
something else. Yeah.
CCUS. It's
Yes.
just a new application, and therefore maybe we don't need to put lots of investment into changing ourselves into something different.
Definitely, definitely, and that's the point you have made. I think is very valid. Like from outside, it looks like we are going to change everything, and that's I was mentioning before. Like it's not about changing everything; it's about those incremental changes, which is easier because we already have technologies, proven technologies, like exactly what you said, CCUS. So people are asking me like, what are you doing in CCUS? It's like we are still supplying drive and motors for those compressors.
Yep.
And so again, like I can put like a separate tag for CCUS, but for us, it's nothing has changed. Like when I see from the company where I work for. So I think that's how these incremental changes will make an impact in the long term. Instead of getting scared and running away from it, or just changing everything in one day. That's not going to solve this energy transition problem that everybody's talking about.
Right.
Now it's also bringing me back to your journey. Like if you have given a chance to make any of the changes in your journey, what those would be?
You know, like I said, I felt like I was too undecided when I was, as an undergraduate, about to graduate. And I was kind of towing the line between going on to grad school or going into the industry, so much that I was even telling interviewers that, hey, I'm actually looking for an internship on this particular opportunity. I know I'm a senior, but I want to
Yeah,
look
yeah.
for an internship, and I'm looking to continue to go get my master's degree here. And
Mhm.
that turned off a lot of
Yes.
uh, uh, companies or interviewers, and for big companies like Exxon, right? Like I was in multiple rounds of interviews and saying things like that. I could see
I
that
know.
from their perspective, they're like, okay, well, my objective right now
Too
is
high.
not to give internships; it's to hire folks that I want to be committed to ourselves. And that was just a life lesson I've, looking back on that. Seeing how I going into industry, I kind of wish, well, maybe if I would have just been a little bit more decisive, career might have looked a little bit different. But hey, I mean, I have no regrets in terms of, the companies I've worked for, and the things that I've gotten to do in my career have been pretty neat. Um,
Yeah, that makes sense. And also no regrets. You have done MBA. We just talked about it. So there's no regrets about that. That's great. And what are you planning next? Anything new that you're working on?
from a professional standpoint, definitely we are looking with this new merger to see what kind of synergies we can realize in terms of our offering to our customers. So that's one thing, professionally, as Subsea Wellheads product line manager. That's kind of my mission right now, is how do we enhance our total offering to customers with these new products. On the personal side, and this is me more just living kind of vicariously through my wife. But one of the reasons why I got my MBA was I've always had this interest in entrepreneurship. And but at the same time, being kind of the main breadwinner for the family, it's like
Yes,
I
stuff.
understand that it's really important with two young kids to have stability in our family. Well, my wife has just signed on to start a franchise with an existing franchise as a home renovation company. So I'm
Okay.
getting to kind of live vicariously my dream of being an entrepreneur through my wife, and kind of coaching her from behind the scenes on that new goal. So that's something that's exciting for me and my family.
And I think I can also connect. My wife she's also engineer. and she also has her own business. So I'm living my entrepreneurial dreams through
That's
her.
awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, we got a lot in common then.
And I also have two kids.
Okay.
So also we talked about your son, actually, like his interest into robotics. Like, and in some of the podcast episodes, we talked about how the new generation is not much interested into science, mathematics, or STEM in general. What's your view on that side, and like what we can do better as a community or as a parent?
Yeah. Well, if I'm talking about my son, he's definitely into STEM, so maybe that kills that bias at least from that perspective. My daughter, maybe not so much. They're very different in terms of appealing to the younger generation. I mean, I think everybody's going to have their gifts, and we shouldn't. Sometimes I get kind of turned off when there's big pushes to force STEM onto people. I think that we do still naturally figure out where our gifts lie and where our interests lie. I think it's definitely important to show people, to showcase all aspects of jobs out there and careers out there, including STEM. I think that's something I'm definitely personally passionate about, is because I'm passionate about what I do as an engineer day to day, right? I've got to share that hobby, turned it into a hobby with my son. Like you said, like I mentioned before, he does Lego robotics with First Lego League is what it's called. And he gets really excited about that. In terms of other things, though, I mean, I think there's still what I think we really need is well-rounded individuals, right? Because that can communicate just as much as they can do math. And I think that's something that the workforce definitely looks for is well-rounded folks that can speak to all aspects, where it's not just you're so specialized into one category of their education.
I agree. I think in some of the previous episodes we talk about like how the knowledge you're gaining within your company. So not just the work that you are doing. So if you're a mechanical engineer, try to get involved with electrical or civil or something else. So overall knowledge will help you to do your work better.
That's right. I mean, if I could throw my other, opinions and 2 cents in, I mean, some things that are, it still seems like our education kind of gears you towards a certain path. I mean, I don't disagree with necessarily the way we learn, but things like that we don't learn as much in school. Like I didn't learn Excel that much, right? But I use Excel every day, right? It's kind of like these things that maybe you could be taught at a younger age to
Definitely.
prepare you. People
Definitely.
will bring up how to do your income taxes, how to,
No, no, we don't talk about those things. Definitely.
right? We're raised and taught how to be maybe good employees, but we're kind of have this general education, but there's still maybe a lot of practical things that I think are
It's
missing.
missing. Yes.
I mean, that's coming from somebody that loved calculus, that loved going into more of like the theoretical stuff that most people say, when am I ever going to use this? And I haven't really used that much calculus as an engineer, to be honest, if I'm being honest with myself.
I fully agree. I fully agree. So that brings us to the next point. If somebody it's trying to make it big in this energy industry, like maybe as an individual or as a business, what would be your one key takeaway for them?
To make it big in this industry, I think um, to become as immersed as possible into what, if we're talking oil and gas specifically, what operators do. How are we actually extracting hydrocarbons out of the ground?
Yeah.
I think that's served me well as developing that knowledge, even though the company I work for today isn't in charge of that. We supply equipment.
Yes.
But what has really benefited me is the closer I can be to the actual operations and the actual processes allows me to empathize with our customers, and therefore we can develop better solutions for them. So any chance people can be in the field and as close as possible to, I think, what is the crux, which is developing and extracting hydrocarbons out of the ground and then finding end-use markets for that. The more you can become knowledgeable about that, the more you can play in any aspect of the industry and add value.
Makes sense. So the point I understood, like you are making, like learn about the application itself, because if you learn about the application, then you can connect with the customer and you can serve them better.
Correct.
Yeah, and that's the mistakes I have seen. Sometimes there are lots of people, they're selling maybe one or two solution to the industry, and they're very much whenever they go into conversation, they quickly jump into their product discussion instead of understanding the application and the requirements of that application. And I think that makes a big difference as a successful individual versus not successful individual. So you can have a really great knowledge on your product, but if you don't understand the application itself, how it fits, the success rates will be lower.
For sure. For sure. That sounds like a product manager standpoint too, right? Understand what your value props, understand why it matters to your end customer.
But that also bringing like another good point about there are so many roles in the organization, like product manager, sales, or BD, or like some other, or maybe engineering. Not all roles are customer facing. And that's also I've seen there is a disconnect, like what customer is looking for, and what people are developing or trying to develop for the customer. So I think even the roles which are not connected they are not connected to customer on the day-to-day basis, but they should also go and visit those customers so they can have a first-hand information on the expectation and the challenges that they're facing.
I think so, and I think that is something that every company should strive for in their culture, is to be customer focused, even if you're not in a customer facing role, because being able to trace what you do in your individual job and how that relates to adding value to the customer helps you be a better employee, even if you don't interact with the customer day to day.
Definitely, definitely. I think that part is missing somehow, but I think we should develop more and more culture like that, where more people are interacting with the customer. So that also brings us to another good point. So we are going through now rapid fire round. That's a tough
All
round.
right, bring it on.
I
Challenge
know, I
accepted.
know. So I was going through some question about based on your role and the experience you have. So let's see how you can face those questions. Okay.
All right,
Are you ready, Adam?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's see how much you're ready. So first question, how would you explain your job to a 5-year-old?
I would say my job is figuring out what people need and delivering upon that need.
Okay, and that's a good one. What's the coolest project you have worked on?
Still to this day, my favorite project was at FMC, where we were in this kind of like rapid response team. We were 3D printing parts and
Oh, really?
deploying them offshore, subsea. We were playing with Arduino controllers and sensors, and I'm a mechanical engineer, right? But like it's amazing, what you can learn just on the internet, right? Like I went to school for mechanical engineering, but I'm using things I learned on YouTube to do my job. But it was basically delivering and embedding sensors into dumb iron equipment, as we'd refer to it, just steel equipment, tools, and equipment that run subsea, and being able to gather data and then being able to make a bunch of graphs, basically. But that was
This is cool.
a pretty neat project. It was more like an initiative than I would say a project, but getting to work, and that definitely taught me how to be nimble and design and get to wear a lot of hats.
And that's interesting. Do you tinker with things at home or leave engineering at work?
Oh my gosh. No, I definitely don't leave engineering at work, given that I've definitely influenced
And
my
now,
son into
yeah, that's the
robotics.
thing. Now you have brought your son along with you.
No, we do like, so my wife's business that she started is a home renovation business. We've gotten that started because
The natural fit
we've done
there.
a lot of DIY projects and figuring out how things work, figuring out how to make things with our hands. That's
Okay.
been definitely something I've carried on to home
And then that's great. So there's a natural fit.
for sure. It's hard to turn off that side of my brain sometimes.
Interesting. What's your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
So one of my favorite pastimes is whenever we have dinner as a family, maybe over a glass of wine or a glass of whiskey is another thing. So that's kind of what I look forward to at the end of the day, is coming home, seeing my kids, seeing my wife, and getting to
Definitely.
have time together.
And nothing can beat that feeling.
Mm-hmm. For
That's great.
sure.
And last not the least, if you could try any other career for a day, what would it be?
A good one. I think I would want to be a construction worker, like Bob the Builder. Again, talking about like working with your hands all day. Like there's some.
Construction.
I used to walk. Like if you've ever been to A&M, it's like there's a joke that it's been under construction since 1897 or whatever, like when it was founded, because it was just always construction going on. So as I'm like, my brain's spinning with tons of stuff, classes, and then I'd see construction workers working on the campus, and I'm like, man, that just looks like such a simple life,
That's
and you're
super
getting to
level.
build these awesome structures. So that would be kind of neat, I
And
think.
also, you don't have to think too much. You have a task is given and you execute
Just
and
go get
you
to
go
work.
and execute that task.
Yep, absolutely.
That's very interesting. But it tells you cannot switch off your mind. So that's you need something that just keep you going. It's really great. So we're running out of time. But before we go, there's another thing I want to ask you. We talk about the personal biases and all those things, but what one of the bias that still exist in the industry?
Well, external to the industry is definitely
Yeah, yeah,
this.
it could be
Yeah.
external or
Well,
or
external looking into our industry, I
yes.
think is the whole idea of like oil and gas is dirty and that it's this like terrible um thing that we do. I mean, I think, you know, I want to be a good steward of the earth, right? But I also understand just, yeah, there's um to make the world work the way it does today, there's very few things that really compete with the value and the benefits you get from oil and gas. We're providing energy to homes, to run towns, and really, if you look at other countries where they are struggling with dependable energy, you want to help them have access to the same dependable energy. Well, the quickest way, the easiest way to do that still today is with what our industry is able to provide. So I think that's a bias we've started to face even more so now than maybe what I once did when I first started. So that's what I'm observing today, and happy to talk about people because I've worked on both sides. I've got to work on
I
the
know.
CCUS and the energy transition stuff.
So one recommendation which can help to come over this bias or maybe to reduce that bias.
I think a recommendation would be to just understand or take a step back of all the things that we use oil and gas for. There's a lot of things. I still joke with people, you think about cars, right? Like electric cars are a big thing and electric cars are really cool. I mean, I wouldn't hesitate if it made sense to go buy a Tesla, right? But there's a lot of still challenges that you have to overcome with electric cars that gasoline powered cars afford you. And one of those is flexibility. Like I have a gasoline can in my garage and it sits there. It doesn't have to be under pressure or anything else, but it has such high energy density in that liquid form compared to so many other things. And it's like, man, that's amazing. Like we should be celebrating that gasoline can, how much energy it contains compared to it costs and the weight of lithium batteries and other forms of energy.
Oh, no, that makes sense. I think that goes back to community. Like the people who are in this energy community, we need to spread this positivity, and that's what we're trying to do with these kind of podcasts, where we're talking about the journeys of someone like Adam, and also talk about this industry in general. So thank you so much for your time, Adam. I really enjoyed lots of conversation, and I have also found that there are lots of common between us.
Yes, for sure. It's been great.
So yeah, we should connect soon.
Yeah.
But before we go, do you have anything to add here?
Nothing to add really, except for to say thank you for wanting to have me on here. I feel privileged to be a part of this.
Thank you so much. With that, I will say bye and keep listening. Oil and Gas Breaking By Show. See you next week. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.